What up? We are back. It is the Bulletin Board Sports Podcast. I am super fucking grainy right now. This sucks. Christian, do not exit us out of this video at the moment. We'll start at 25 seconds. Is going to be the first intro. Ready? Here we go. Welcome back to the Bulletin Board Sports Podcast. It is Pat, Christian, Mike, and Turtle, and we're going to jump right into the action this weekend. Starting off with a game that, as a Bears fan, I got to say, I'm dreading to watch it a little bit because we're talking Saquon Barkley could have been a Bear. Jaden Daniels, I would love Caleb Williams, but he could have been a Bear. I mean, Dan Quinn, had the Bears moved off of not even moving off of Eberflus, when the Bears hired Matt Eberflus, they also interviewed Dan Quinn. He was one of the last three options, I believe. And at that point, the only thing I'd known him for was, as a head coach, I should say, was absolutely blowing the 2017 NFC Championship, or Super Bowl, I should say, to Tom Brady, 28-3. We all know it. We all hate it. It's the Commanders. It's a long-winded way of saying, as a Bears fan, it's the Commanders versus the Eagles. And let's get right into it. I mean, I'm going to say from my perspective here, the Commanders' rush defense is going to be the Achilles heel in this game. They played well against the Lions. They did what they had to do. But come on, Jared Goff turned the ball over 4 times. We're talking Eagles now. We're talking hand the ball to Saquon Barkley, worry about it later. Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to do what he has to do in this game to keep it together. And I got the Eagles. Of course I do. I predicted them. This is a preview for the Bills-Chiefs game as well. I predicted the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl against the Buffalo Bills. So, of course, I'm still riding with my pick, the Eagles. Does anyone have a problem with that?
Allow me to go Lee Corso, not so fast. It may look like Pat's going stop action motion, going because this game's been going around since Al Capone was alive. They've been playing since then, since the mob was around. Issues going into this game, though. Commanders' rush defense just let Jahmyr Gibbs go 105 yards on them in the divisional round. That's a problem. There was an issue on the ground with that defense going into the game. Offense versus the number 1 seed in the NFC that just gave up 45 points. But you know who came through? Jaden Daniels. 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. Something that I think they're going to be able to exploit against an Eagles defense that has not been coming into form, but there's been problems. But you know what they did, and people are going to forget. They picked off Jordan Love 3 times in Week 18. It seems like months ago. And you know what happened? They picked off Jaden Daniels 1 time the week before. I think this is going to be a game where the Eagles defense puts up the numbers against them. Granted, Jaden Daniels had 5 touchdowns in Week 16, or 5 touchdowns, 2 picks in Week 16, 36-33 game. Hurts left that game, and I think there's going to be a lot of questions going into this game about which Jalen Hurts we're going to see, because we saw 131 yards against Green Bay. We saw 128 last game. He's not healthy. I think I like a low-scoring game. I do like the Eagles to pull it out. But what's going to be the X factor, I think, where the points are going to come from is Jaden Daniels and the Commanders' offense. I think that's going to be an X factor going into this one.
Christian, as a Bears fan, as much as anybody, how good of a coordinator Vic Fangio is, how elite of a defensive coordinator Vic Fangio is. As a head coach, it's debatable. But the guy was the reason that anybody respects Matt Nagy, let's be quite honest. If anybody deserved that Coach of the Year award, it was Vic Fangio. and I could turn this around and talk about the Bears all day during this video, but all I'm saying is Vic Fangio is that guy, and I think he'll be able to handle him. Jane Daniels is the best rookie we've seen. And Turtle, that might be hard to swallow as a CJ Stroud guy and as a Texans fan, but Jane Daniels immediately one-upped CJ Stroud. That is true. However, Vic Fangio is as good of a defensive coordinator as anyone can have. He's the best meat shield that Nick Sirianni could ever ask for on the defensive end. And Christian, you have to respect Vic Fangio in this game, right? As much of a Jaden Daniels guy you are.
I do, but I do think it comes down to the talent that they have, and it seems like every week they're losing more and more talent. I think six. Right now it's at 6-point spread. I think that's a lot of points, and I think we have to put some respect on Jaden's name now. I mean, we've seen him do it every week. I think it's going to be a close game. It's always been one-score games for Jaden, it feels like.
Right.
I still got the Eagles. They're my choice to make it to the Super Bowl, but I am very concerned about the health of Jalen Hurts, as Michael mentioned. They're going to run the ball 50% of the time. That's just what they do. So Saquon's going to have to dominate. The Commanders
He's ready
don't
to,
have.
bro.
He is. The Commanders don't have a great run defense. It'll be interesting to see what the weather is on that day, if anybody knows what the weather's going to be like. But for me, it's going to come down to basically what we feel like is Washington's Achilles heel, especially since they lost Jonathan Allen. But if you noticed, he's back already. I don't know how he came back from a torn pectoral muscle so fast. Maybe some deer antler spray was involved. But he was really good on versus Detroit. I think it's going to be a really close game. It's going to come down to a play or two. And obviously, the ones making those plays, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon, I just think it's more likely that they make the plays than, say, Terry McLaurin or a Zach Ertz or a Austin Eckler. Like, as you mentioned last week, Pat, you did not have an Austin Eckler breakout game on your bingo card. I think if everything goes the way it should, Jalen Carter's going to dominate, especially without Sam Cosmi in the lineup. He dominates every week at this point. So, yeah, I expect more of the same, and I think that's the reason the Eagles win.
Turtle, what are your thoughts?
I was sounding the. I think I've been on the pod and talked about how much I love Vic Fangio as a DC. I respect how he calls defense. I think he comes in every week with a versatile game plan. You know, I talked about it in the first game against the Packers in the wild card round about how Vic Fangio doesn't play with stack boxes a lot and doesn't need to because of how talented their front seven is. But he changed that up, knowing that Jordan Love, he was going to let Jordan Love beat him, and Jordan Love faltered and folded like a lawn chair. And I really respect how he comes in with each week with a different game plan. And he's one of the best schemers in the league when it comes to that. From my perspective, what I'm thinking of is I'm kind of am with Mike. I do think it's going to be more low scoring than the last time. You talk about a team that's within the division. This is the third time you're seeing Jaden Daniels this year. Same thing, vice versa. We don't know how healthy Jalen Hurts is. It's supposed to be weather. It's supposed to be just cold. It's supposed to be 30s, but sunny. Both these teams are used to playing in the weather, so I don't think the weather will be that big of a factor. My main thing is when are we going to get, and I know this is time and true, at least not this year, but for the most part, when are we going to get a Kingsbury debacle? When are we going to get a Cliff Kingsbury debacle? Because normally he's a second half fader. We saw that when he was the coach of the Cardinals. We saw that when he was a head coach in college. Second half of the year, Cliff Kingsbury led offenses tend to fade off. Has been the case so far. So is that what I'm asking myself going to this game is that an aberration, or are we due for something like that to happen, especially against one of the top defensive play callers in the NFL and Vic Fangio? So I'm going to be interested to see, especially going up against a team that, they're playing each other for the third time this season. I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out. I lean Eagles here at the number of 6. It's tough for me to say like you should lay the 6 with the Eagles, especially you don't know where that margin is going to come from, especially if Jalen Hurts isn't healthy. Um, it's hard to sit here and stomach that 6, but I'm not rushing to the window to bet the Commanders either. So from a side perspective, I do think the Eagles will win. But I think that there's going to be a little bit less scoring than I think people look at on paper.
I just gotta underscore real quick. I gotta underscore this Vic Fangio point with this. The Commanders have got to be one of the most. We'll put some respect on Cliff Kingsbury's name for his consistency, but and respect to Jane Daniels for the season he's put together. It's been his response to the blitz and his ability to take what the defense gives him has been great. But they are one of the most gimmicky offenses in the NFL. They run no huddle at a dramatic rate, much more than any other team. I think they run like half of their plays have been out of no huddle. They also constantly, and this is a testament to Cliff Kingsbury, have set Jaden Daniels up with easy throws to wide open guys, schemed open, that they've been able to build through this season and legitimately give him a runway to becoming what he is, which is an elite quarterback, realistically a top 10 quarterback at this point, which is incredibly respectable. But once again, Vic Fangio is not going to have to do what Aaron Glenn did last week and blitz constantly because he couldn't trust the guys up front and he couldn't trust Kindle Vildor, that's for damn sure, in the back, in the secondary, okay? The Eagles defense is not going to be that desperate, and it's going to be a much harder it's going to be a much more difficult game. The Lions defense was totally debilitated last week. The Eagles are not in that position. They've been able to be consistent all year. This is a team that has honestly dominated their schedule when you look at, surprisingly, when we considered that Nick Sirianni could be a guy who, if the Eagles had slipped even a little bit, on the street. So I don't know. With how far this Eagles team has come, I think that Vic Fangio, this is a long-winded way of saying I think Vic Fangio will have an answer for whatever gimmick that Cliff Kingsbury, good as it might be, throws at him.
Here's the question you got to ask yourself, though, Pat. Do you think this is the week that the blueprint for what I would think, and you mentioned it, you say gimmicky. I just say it's more of like a college offense. I don't know if I would say gimmicky because it's not like they're doing Ben Johnson trick plays out here half the time. Sorry, maybe not sorry. It's your head. He's your head coach now, but wow. it's a college offense. So do you think that the drop off happens now, or do you think the drop off happens going into next year? That's the thing, because I could see it being you have a week. Again, granted, it's the third time you've seen these guys, so you could definitely make the case it happens this week, but. I think it's more likely that those adjustments are made in the offseason to this sort of off. And we saw it with CJ Stroud this year. We saw a little bit of a sophomore slump. Part of that was because the Texans can't protect or anything, not to go on a tangent, but I think the drop off is due for sure. It's just a matter of when do you think it's going to happen. If you think it's going to happen this week, then, by all means, fire on Philly and, think Commanders struggle here. I just don't know for sure.
Turtle,
I can see it happening as a scenario. But
going off of that, I really like the under in this game because I feel like there's still.
I'm with you there.
What they've had to do, especially last game, is playing to what I think Jalen Hurts' strength is going into this late in the year, which is he's obviously has a shoulder injury that he's been dealing with. I mean, he just ran it for 70 yards and a touchdown, and they've kept it on the ground because they haven't needed to pass the ball. I mean, you've seen. Not a drop off with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but you've seen. I mean, Dallas Goedert had 51 yards. I mean, he played pretty well, but they're throwing it only when necessary. I think they're going to be able to keep the ball on the ground against this team. And that's going to work to not only clock control but ball control, and then explosive plays. I think I like the Commanders' first half in this, but I do like the under. Just from the fact that I think both of the teams, I mean, if the Eagles are going to control the ball, it's going to be on the ground because they're not going to try and force Jalen Hurts if he's not able to make the passes that we've been seeing him make early on in the season. They've completely changed over their offense, and they've won it on ball control and just giving it to Saquon Barkley. And I think he's obviously going to be a minus 134 for a touchdown in these kind of games. So I agree with you guys. I think at the end of the day, they're probably going to cover. I do like maybe sprinkling on first half, first quarter for Washington to maybe keep it close. Spread wise, maybe they're probably about 3.5 for first half going into this one. But I mean, Jalen Hurts has just showed that he's still able to make it happen on the ground, and we already know that Saquon Barkley can still make it happen on the ground. So,
do we want to talk about a gimmicky offense? I don't know if you guys saw again, I don't know if this is a true stat or not, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think it was last week or against the Packers. Jalen Hurts it was his first drop back from center pass without play action incorporated in his entire career. Did you guys see that?
yeah.
That's wild.
Again, there's no way that I mean, maybe that's true though. I feel like I've watched a decent amount of the Eagles play, and like I've never seen him take a straight drop back pass from center, like one of those five step hitch and throw type plays. So I don't know. Speaking of,
and I mean, it's a big roll tide for Jalen Hurts, of course. Oklahoma fans want to claim him, but of course he's an Alabama guy, and he doesn't need to play that way. We saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got Saquon Barkley. He's got the receivers to make it happen with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Dallas Goedert is an elite tight end. He has all the weapons he needs. This is not to even talk about the offensive line. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be dropping back to pass when we've always known about Jalen Hurts that what makes him special is his ability to run the ball, his ability to just be a power quarterback. I'm not usually this strong on this, but he is a leader. That guy is a legitimate. He's going to get emotional talking about an Alabama guy. He's a leader. It's true.
Well, to push back on that, I just think basically it's important to understand that he's not healthy at all.
He's going to do what he has to do.
180
I don't know what
yards,
he's going to do, though.
Over 180 yards in the last 8 games.
Honestly, yeah, I think you're talking up Jalen Hurts. Like, I think the Eagles it's going to be a really close game. I think, to Mike's point, last week versus Detroit, you really didn't have the time. Like, Detroit could not slow the game down.
No.
And I think that was to their detriment because Washington was scoring so fast. I think the Eagles are definitely set up to keep the ball on the ground, control the time of possession, and they're going to have to do that. But I still think Jaden's going to have a ton of success against this defense, given what we saw last week with the Rams, even in the snow. I mean, Matt Stafford is obviously Matt Stafford, but you saw some real holes in the Eagles defense. I think starting with Nakobe Dean, he's out for the year. So you saw it the year before when they didn't have as much success. It's because they lost TJ Edwards to the Bears. I think if they can take advantage of that missing linebacker in the middle, it's going to be a really tight game. And then, man, if one of the corners go out, if Slay or Mitchell goes out, Isaiah Rodgers was really getting picked on last week. So I am concerned about the Eagles' depth in the secondary. I think Jay Daniels is going to have a good day. I think he's going to throw for 2 to 3 touchdowns. I'd take 2.5 over touchdowns. But I think the Eagles, what they're going to have to do is keep the ball on the ground. And most of their explosive plays are going to have to come from Saquon or Kenneth Gainwell, for that matter.
And he only threw the ball 20 times last game. I mean, granted,
It was snowing. It
was snowing, and he obviously is dealing with the injury. But he took 7 sacks as well. He's not himself going into what is their most important game of the year. And you're talking about an offense who is firing on all cylinders, going in with all the confidence in the world. It's
don't let it get to a shootout.
Don't let it get to a shootout, but it's also a weight of the world versus us against the world kind of, how it is going into the game. And I think that actually might play a big role in this.
Yeah, I just took a glance at the injury report, and Quinyon Mitchell is questionable. He was a limited participant today with a shoulder injury. Dallas Goedert did not participate in practice yesterday. Sorry, these are yesterday's practice reports, so Wednesday. I don't think we've seen Thursdays yet. Oh, today's Wednesday. Jeez. But anyways, yeah, this is today's. Quinyon Mitchell shoulder was limited. Jalen Hurts knee limited. Goddard ankle did not participate. AJ Brown rest limited. So yeah, if Quinyon Mitchell's banged up, that is I think the depth on that side on the back end of Philly's defense could definitely pose an issue.
Sam Cosme, I think, is hurt in going
he's
into this
out.
one for the
He's not
Commanders.
playing.
I think he's out.
He's out, I said,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that when we talk about this game, normally when you speak about a team, like if they can control the ball and then possessions, when you think about that sort of team, that team's usually the underdog. And the roles are kind of reversed here when you think about a team that needs to limit the other team's possessions. I don't know. I just think that that's interesting. Like the path to Philly winning. I know we touched on the Commanders' run defense, but it just seems like the paths are super inverted when it comes to what your typical underdog is and what your typical favorite is. And I don't know. I find that to be very intriguing when it comes to the Commanders' standpoint.
Right. I mean, the pressure is totally off the Commanders at this point, off Washington, right? I mean, what they've done this season, they don't have anything left to prove, realistically. The Eagles, let's acknowledge, I mean, it's going to be a failure for Nick Sirianni. He almost blew it last week against the Rams, and I've been an Eagles backer throughout these playoffs, but you have to admit they were flirting with danger there, and Matt Stafford's not even a good cold weather quarterback either. I mean, it's concerning. We'll see what Jane Daniels is able to do. Like I said, the pressure's off this team. They're going to be scoring the ball much faster than the Eagles are going to. As you said, Turtle, it's an interesting dynamic with the heavy favorite having to play ball control and the underdog being the team that's ready to just drop 30 points easy on any team they play just because of the season that Jane Daniels has had and really the complete roster they surrounded themselves with. I don't want to come off like I'm selling the Commanders short, really, but I just don't see them making it past this week. But I want to give them their props for sure. But I think Saquon Barkley is going to be the key in this game. The ball control. I think the Eagles will do what they have to do. I think that's really the long and short of this game is that as great as Jane Daniels is, he won't be enough for the team that is this 2024 Philadelphia Eagles.
My last point on this will be I'm very curious to see if we're going to see more out of Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Dante Fowler, and see if it's going to be like a concerted effort to get after Jalen Hurts and get in the backfield and at least, disrupt what is going to make their, offense go, which is going to be play action, getting the ball in Saquon Barkley's hand, and then Jalen Hurts being able to, make it work with his feet or, through, with his arm. They only had 2 sacks against Detroit, and that was they were able to pick off Jared Goff, who was struggling like through the air. But I don't see Jalen Hurts making those kind of mistakes. So I feel like if Washington wants to make it work, it's going to have to be being the disruptors with it on defense.
This kind of makes me feel like a type of game where it's like I feel like the first team that gets to like 20 plus points or first team that gets to like 24, 27 points is going to win the game. Because I don't think Philly is built to play from behind. They cannot get down early in this game. If they get down by 2 or more touchdowns, I think that's really tough sledding for them. Not saying that it'll happen, but they cannot go down multiple possessions in this game, I think, or they're going to be in trouble.
Oh man, I just real quick. I hate that you're manifesting this in me, but I'm thinking about the other factor that Nick Sirianni has not been a guy that is going to hold a team together realistically. He's not going to be the calming presence on a team.
Yeah,
And
no.
if they do go down in this game,
Your leader, Jalen Hurts, is
I'm
supposed
worried.
to be that guy.
They're going to get booed.
He is more of a leader than Nick
Yeah,
Sirianni, but I'm saying
yeah, if
Nick
they go
Sirianni is
down,
more of a
man.
disrupting force than
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts could be a calming force, as calming a force Jalen Hurts can be. But Nick Sirianni, who knows if Big Dom is liable to get involved on the sideline just with everything that's going on. This Eagles team does feel like the team of destiny.
Yeah,
for me,
I don't know. Over
I don't think it's gonna happen.
under 2.5 quarters. When does AJ Brown bring the book out? When does he start reading the
Yeah.
book on the sideline? Over under is 2.5 quarters. That puts it right in the middle of the third. Does he bring it out before? Or does he bring it out after the middle of the third?
Real question is, what's he reading?
That's
Self-help.
something about excellence. Yeah.
AJ Brown AJ Brown needs a self-help book. The guy's making $20 plus million a year playing professional football. He needs to improve himself.
Where the sidewalk ends or where the season ends, we'll see.
Wow, that was a poetic ending. Unless Christian has a final thought on
Dr.
this game.
Seuss over here.
Let me go, coward.